Our Raymarine Autopilot, a wheel-driven system, quit working. So while we were down in Dry Tortugas, we were investigating the cause and determined it was in the drive section that's on the wheel. Let me show you what we got. Turn the camera around. Go. This is the wheel. Goes on the pulpit. Turn the wheel. It turns the rudder. Raymarine Autopilot system, here's a little better picture here, has a wheel that bolts to the spokes, gets directions from a computer here. It's got a flux gate compass in it, so it always knows where it's at and where it's headed, and sends it to an electric motor that turns the wheel here. Very simple system. So we took this apart. There were bearings falling out on the floor. You can see I got a bag full of bearings here, but I've laid this together to give you an idea. This just snaps right off. Even on the new one, which is here, that snaps off because you got to drill some mounting holes. That's what it looks like new. The bearings are trapped in a race all the way around, and a plastic race here that's driven by a belt. What you see there, it's turned by a motor, which you see there. So we took ours apart, took the motor off, and found that the bearing races were cracked. See that? So with these broken, all the little bearings fall out, and it don't work. So it's plastic, it's over 10 years old, so can't say that's a bad thing. It lasted a long time. So we're replacing it with a new unit. So let's drill some mounting holes to match these in this wheel so we can bolt it up. You can see there's a lot of marks. Tells you which ones to drill depending on the size of your wheel. Should be a simple installation. So let's get her done. The instructions are very clear on drilling these holes to mount this, but I have the old cover, and you can see all the holes are numbered and clearly marked, so I'm just doing the same as the old one. 3/6 and 3/6/5. 3/6. And then I'll drill the other one. Once the holes are drilled, you just snap the cover back on and line it up with your spokes. Pay attention to where center is. You can see got my basically centered a little white plastic arrow for my rudder. That way the drive motor here will line up with the slot there. All this rotates. I don't imagine it's too super critical, but it makes it easier. And then you just tighten up the Allen screws, and that attaches this to the wheel. Reinstalling the wheel, simple. Just line it up with the the keyway, slide it on. Single nut holds it on. You've got a rudder post here, or a little steering post in here. You got to get through this little slot. Motor goes through, you're cut out in the bracket here, and then we just plug it in. Alright, so we got our new drive assembly on the wheel with the new motor and all that. Everything's good here. But when we go to test it out, which you can do without moving, it's still going to move the rudder, and you give it corrective information, nothing's happening. The wheel should move every time I do that. So it'll sit there and try and move the wheel, and the computer will say, okay, I'm trying to move the wheel, trying to move the wheel, try to move the wheel. You can see just the swing of the compass, that's the wind. But that's what you'll see. Then it says drive stop. That was the error I was getting when this stuff was broken and wasn't working. So let's investigate further. Could have burned a fuse or something when the stuff was broken, wouldn't work. So hit standby and we'll do some voltage checks. Alright, I've disconnected the plug from the back of the drive motor. That's just a 12 volt DC motor. Polarity isn't important. Matter of fact, in the programming you can switch polarity, but it does have different colored wires. But I've taken the plug apart so I can check for corrosion and stuff. Everything looks good. So now I've got my meter out. I'll do a voltage check and see what we're getting. Meter's connected. Let's give the Autopilot the commands to turn the rudder. Okay, it's on auto. Let's say, see what the wind drift is doing. We'll go opposite. 20 degrees port. I'm getting 1.35 nominal voltage. Should be getting 13 volts. 1.326 is just nominal. And drive stopped. So I'm not getting the voltage out here to run the drive motor. So now let's backtrace to where the wires come off the computer and see what we get there. Go to standby. Okay, so we're back here at the brain to our Autopilot. And we've got a couple fuses. There's 2 amp fuse here, which is good. 15 amp fuse here, which is good. That's not good for me because that means we didn't blow a fuse. Here's the connections to the rudder, the motor. And I've checked them. They're tight. So my next test is to get some wire out and run a continuity test on these 2 wires. Make sure that we're getting continuity out to the plug at the motor. And hopefully the fault's there. If it had been a blown fuse, it would have been easier. If it had been a loose wire, it would have been easier. So let's move on to continuity and go from there. Okay, going over all these connections with a screwdriver again, and I found this loose. This appears to be the ground wire. Look at that. See that? I'm not real impressed with that. So let me take this apart and reconnect that. See if right here, see if this will solve the problem. All right, we've tightened up that ground wire. Let's see what we got. I've got my meter hooked up. Let's give it a course correction. And boom. Almost 6.5 volts. So let's hook the wires up. See this baby work. Success! Autopilot works. You can see we're just drifting around. You can see it making minute corrections, but let's do a 10-degree correction. Boom! That's what we're talking about. Sailing life just got easier. Another mechanical and electronical success. And as we blow around in the wind on anchor, you can see the rudder trying to correct it. Woohoo!